The decision to exile Earth passed. Then humanity made its rules clear. Part 2. The Silence. 20 years passed behind the barrier. The quarantine field surrounded the entire solar system like an invisible wall. It stretched billions of miles in every direction, far beyond the orbit of the furthest planets. Human ships could travel anywhere within this boundary. But the moment they approached the edge, warning signals would sound. Any vessel that crossed the line would be destroyed by automated weapons that the Conclave had placed throughout the region. Earth had become a prison. The galaxy had become a dream that humanity could see but never touch. But humanity did not die. Humanity did not give up. Instead, humanity got to work. Nicole Carter was born 3 years after the exile began. She never knew a time when humans traveled freely among the stars. To her, the barrier was simply a fact of life, like gravity or the need to breathe. She grew up on Mars, in a small colony where everyone knew everyone else, where resources were carefully managed and nothing was wasted. She showed talent for engineering from a young age. By 16, she had rebuilt the colony's water recycling system, using parts that no one else had thought to use. By 20, she had designed a new type of solar collector that doubled energy production. By 30, she was leading the most important research project in human history. The Armstrong station orbited Luna like a second moon. It was enormous, built over 15 years from materials mined in the asteroid belt. Inside its spinning rings, thousands of scientists and engineers worked on problems that the Conclave had specifically forbidden humans from solving. Nicole stood in the primary laboratory, watching a small metal sphere float in the center of a glass chamber. Wires and sensors surrounded it from every angle. Her team of 40 researchers waited in tense silence. "Begin the test," she said quietly. Energy hummed through the systems. Lights flickered. The metal sphere began to glow with a soft blue light that grew brighter and brighter until everyone had to look away. Then the sphere vanished. Alarms did not sound. Nothing exploded. One moment the sphere was there, and the next moment it was simply gone. Nicole checked her instruments. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her voice remained steady. "Confirm location of test object." A technician answered from across the room. "Object located 3 kilometers away, inside collection chamber 7. No damage detected. Temperature and composition unchanged." The room erupted in cheering. People hugged each other. Some were crying. Nicole allowed herself a small smile before raising her hand for silence. "This is only the first step," she reminded them. "We need to test range. We need to test safety. We need to make sure this works with larger objects and living creatures. But today, we have proven that it is possible." She looked around at her team, at the people who had given years of their lives to this moment. The Conclave uses natural wormholes to travel between stars. They think this is the only way. They are wrong. We have just created our own path through space. We have just opened a door that no one can close. On Earth, Daniel Harper heard the news through channels that officially did not exist. He was 73 years old now, living quietly in a small house in the mountains. His wife had died 5 years ago. His children had grown and moved to other colonies. He spent most of his time reading and gardening and thinking about the past. His grandson Kevin visited every Sunday for dinner. Kevin was 23, tall and serious, fresh from graduating at the top of his class at the military academy. He reminded Daniel of himself at that age, though Kevin had a harder edge that came from growing up in a world that had been rejected by everyone else. "The jump drive project succeeded," Kevin said over dinner. "They kept it quiet, but everyone in the military knows." Daniel nodded slowly. He had expected this news for years. "What happens now?" "Nothing yet. The council is debating. Some people want to use it immediately. Others want to wait and see." "And what do you think?" Kevin set down his fork and considered the question. I think we should be patient. The Conclave has forgotten about us. They think we are sitting here slowly dying. Let them keep thinking that. Daniel smiled. His grandson understood something important. The greatest weapon was often the one your enemy did not know you possessed. There are rumors from outside, Kevin continued. The Veleth are having problems with their outer colonies. Some kind of rebellion or civil war. The Marathi have gone completely silent. No one knows why. Daniel had heard similar things through his old contacts. The galaxy was not as stable as it appeared. The old powers were showing cracks. Change was coming, whether anyone wanted it or not. When I left that chamber 20 years ago, Daniel said, I told them they would need us someday. I believe that more now than ever. And when that day comes? Daniel looked out the window at the mountains that had stood unchanged for millions of years. When that day comes, we will have a choice to make. We can take revenge for how they treated us. We can ignore them and let them suffer. Or we can show them who we truly are. Kevin frowned. After everything they did to us, you would help them? The question is not whether they deserve help. The question is what kind of people we want to be. If we let it turn us into something cruel and bitter, then they have won. If we remain true to our best nature, then we have won, regardless of what happens next. Kevin did not answer. He was young and his anger was still fresh. But Daniel had learned long ago that anger was a fire that could warm you or burn you, depending on how you used it. Months passed. The jump drive technology improved. The first crude test sent a ship to the edge of the solar system and back in less than a minute. The second test sent a ship outside the barrier without triggering any alarms. The barrier watched for conventional engines. It had no way to detect something that simply disappeared from one place and appeared in another. Humanity had been locked in a cage. Now the door was open, though no one outside knew it yet. Nicole Carter sent her final report to the Council. The technology was ready. Human ships could go anywhere in the galaxy in seconds. The question was no longer whether they could leave. The question was when and why. The Council received the report and began their discussions. They knew that whatever they decided would shape the future of their species. They knew that the galaxy still thought of them as prisoners. They knew that everything was about to change. In his mountain home, Daniel Harper waited for news. He was old now, and he did not know how many years he had left. But he believed with absolute certainty that he would live to see humanity return to the stars. The silence of exile was almost over. What came next would determine whether humanity emerged as heroes or conquerors, as builders or destroyers. The choice, as always, would be theirs alone. The decision to exile Earth passed. Then humanity made its rules clear. Part 3. The First Contact. The distress signal came from deep space, far beyond the quarantine barrier that surrounded humanity's home. It was a standard emergency broadcast, the kind that any species could understand. Someone was dying, and they were begging for help. Lieutenant Amy Walsh detected the signal first. She was young, only 25, working the night shift on Monitoring Station 14. Her job was to listen to the galaxy that had rejected her people, to gather information about events that humans were forbidden to witness. She had never expected to hear anything like this. Unidentified vessel under attack, the signal repeated. Engines failing, life support critical. 3,000 civilians aboard, requesting immediate assistance. Any vessel in range, please respond. The ship was in Veleth territory, nearly 300 light-years from Earth. At conventional speeds, it would take decades to reach them. But humanity no longer traveled at conventional speeds. She forwarded the signal to her supervisor, who forwarded it to his supervisor, who eventually forwarded it to Captain Benjamin Cole. Benjamin was 38 years old, born on Mars during the first year of exile. He had never breathed the air of Earth or walked beneath an alien sky. His entire life had been spent preparing for a moment that everyone hoped would come, and everyone feared might never arrive. He commanded the Endeavor, the first true warship built with human jump drive technology. It was smaller than the massive vessels that patrolled conclave space, but it was faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its weapons were new designs, created by engineers who had spent 20 years with nothing to do but improve on old ideas. Benjamin read the distress signal 3 times. He checked the coordinates. He calculated the risk. Then he made a decision that was not authorized by the Council, was not approved by any committee, and might get him executed for treason. Set coordinates for the distress signal, he told his crew. We are going to help. His first officer, a woman named Patricia Santos, looked at him with concern. Sir, this will violate the Exile terms. If the Conclave finds out we can leave the barrier, then they will know, Benjamin said simply. But I will not sit here and listen to 3,000 people die when I have the power to save them. The crew exchanged glances. Some looked worried. Others looked determined. None of them objected. The jump took 7 seconds. One moment the Endeavor was inside the barrier, orbiting Mars. The next moment, it was surrounded by stars that no human had seen up close in 20 years. The scene before them was chaos. A massive civilian transport drifted in space, its engines dark, and its hull scarred by weapons fire. Around it circled a dozen smaller ships, clearly raiders, picking at the transport like vultures around a dying animal. Benjamin did not hesitate. All weapons, target the attacking vessels, fire at will. Human weapons lit up the darkness. The raiders had never seen anything like the energy beams that sliced through their shields. They had never encountered missiles that could change course mid-flight to follow a target. Within minutes, half the raiding ships were destroyed. The other half fled into the void as fast as their engines could carry them. The Endeavor moved alongside the transport. Benjamin opened a communication channel. The face that appeared on his screen was Velith. Blue scales, dark eyes, a mouth full of small sharp teeth. 20 years ago, the Velith had voted to exile humanity. 20 years ago, they had called humans a threat that needed to be contained. Now a Velith captain stared at a human ship that had appeared from nowhere to save his people. I am Captain Benjamin Cole of the human vessel Endeavor, Benjamin said. We received your distress signal. What assistance do you require? The Velith captain could not seem to find words. His mouth opened and closed several times before he finally managed to speak. How? How are you here? The barrier. The barrier doesn't matter, Benjamin said calmly. What matters is that your ship is damaged and your people are in danger. We have medical teams and engineers ready to assist. Will you accept our help? The Velith captain looked around at his bridge crew. They appeared just as confused as he was. Finally, he nodded slowly. Yes, we accept your help. Our life support will fail in 4 hours. We have wounded who need immediate attention. We have families, children. We will take care of them, Benjamin promised. Open your airlocks. Our teams are on their way. For the next 6 hours, humans and Velith worked side by side. Human doctors treated wounded aliens. Human engineers patched broken systems. Human crew members carried supplies and helped evacuate the most critical patients to the Endeavor's medical bay. The Velith watched everything with wide eyes. They had been told that humans were dangerous and unstable. They had been told that humanity would seek revenge for the Exile. Instead, they saw human hands reaching out to save Velith lives. When the transport was stable enough to continue to the nearest safe port, Benjamin escorted them personally. He stayed just long enough to make sure they were safe, then prepared to leave. The Velith captain called him one last time before he jumped away. Why? The Velith asked. His voice was quiet, almost confused. We voted against you. We supported your exile. Why would you risk everything to save us? Benjamin considered the question. He thought about his parents, who had raised him to believe in something better. He thought about his crew, who had followed him without hesitation. He thought about all the years humanity had spent in isolation, dreaming of the stars they could not reach. Because you needed help, he said finally. Because we could provide it. Because being treated badly by others does not give us the right to become bad ourselves. He paused, then added, we never wanted to be your enemies. You made that choice for us, but we can still choose who we want to be. And we choose to be the kind of people who help those in need, even those who have hurt us. The communication ended. The Endeavour vanished in a flash of light, returning to the solar system it had left hours before. News of the rescue spread across the galaxy within days. A human ship had crossed impossible distances to save Velith civilians from raiders. A human crew had risked war to help their former enemies. The exiled species, the ones who had been condemned to die alone, had proven themselves to be something no one expected. The conclave demanded explanations. The Velith government refused to comment publicly, though privately they sent a message of thanks through channels that officially did not exist. Other species began to wonder if they had made a mistake 20 years ago. And humanity remained silent, waiting for what would come next. They did not have to wait long. The decision to exile Earth passed. Then humanity made its rules clear. Part 4. The War. The Marathi extinction fleet came from the darkness between galaxies, from empty space where no stars burned and no life had ever existed. They were machines built by a civilization that had died millions of years ago, programmed with a single purpose: destroy all organic life. No one knew why their ancient creators had built them. No one knew why they had waited so long to attack. All anyone knew was that they had arrived, and they were unstoppable. The Velith Navy was the first to fall. Their proud warships, which had patrolled the galaxy for thousands of years, were reduced to scrap metal in a matter of weeks. The Velith homeworld burned. Billions died in the first month alone. The Marathi collective, the crystalline beings who had voted so eagerly for humanity's exile, simply went silent. Their worlds went dark. Their representatives stopped answering calls. When scouts finally reached their territory, they found nothing but ash and debris floating in empty space. The Seer Council fell next. Then the Water Dwellers. Then the beings of pure energy who had thought themselves beyond physical harm. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy were crushed beneath the extinction fleet's advance. The conclave sent desperate messages in every direction. They begged for allies. They pleaded for help. They offered wealth and territory and ancient secrets to anyone who would stand beside them. One of those messages reached Earth. The United Earth Council gathered in an emergency session. Representatives from every colony and station filled the chamber, their faces grim as they watched recordings of the destruction. Cities burning, ships exploding, entire species vanishing forever. "They want our help," said Councilman Gregory Palmer, an older man who had spent his career arguing for isolation. "The same people who locked us away for 20 years now want us to save them." "Can you blame them?" asked Councilwoman Megan Brooks. She was only 31, the youngest person ever elected to the council, but she spoke with confidence beyond her years. "They are facing extinction. We would do the same." "We owe them nothing," Gregory insisted. "They called us dangerous. They called us unstable. They were afraid of what we might become. Let them face the consequences of their own fear." The debate continued for 3 days. Some argued that humanity should stay behind the barrier and let the galaxy destroy itself. Others pointed out that if the extinction fleet finished with the conclave, it would eventually find Earth. A few suggested using the crisis to negotiate for power and influence. On the 3rd day, Megan Brooks asked to address the full council. She stood at the center of the chamber, small but determined, and spoke the words that would change everything. I have listened to 3 days of arguments, she said. I have heard anger and fear and calculation. But I have not heard much about who we want to be. She looked around at her fellow council members. The exile hurt us. It was unfair. It was cruel. We have every right to be angry about it. But anger is not a foundation for building a future. Revenge is not a reason to let billions of innocent people die. She pulled up images on the main screen. Veleth children, Marathi families, Seer elders, all of them now dead or dying. These people did not vote for our exile. Most of them were not even born when that decision was made. They are farmers and teachers and artists who simply want to live. If we turn our backs on them because their ancestors wronged us, we become exactly what the conclave accused us of being. Gregory stood to argue, but Megan continued. I am not saying we should forget what was done to us. I am saying we should not let it define us. Humanity has always been at its best when facing impossible challenges. This is our chance to show the galaxy who we really are. The vote passed unanimously. Humanity would join the war. Admiral Christopher Lane led the fleet. He was 52 years old, a veteran of the early development programs who had spent his entire career preparing for a battle he hoped would never come. Now that battle was here, and he was ready. 147 human ships jumped into the Battle of Valoris on the 73rd day of the war. They appeared in perfect formation around the Extinction Fleet's command vessel, a massive construct of dark metal and glowing energy that had already destroyed a dozen worlds. The enemy did not expect them. The enemy did not know that humanity had developed jump technology. The enemy did not know that human weapons had been designed specifically to counter threats like this. The battle lasted 9 hours. Human ships danced through space in patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully calculated. They struck and vanished, reappeared and struck again. Their weapons punched through armor that had resisted everything the Conclave could throw at it. Their shields held against attacks that had vaporized entire fleets. The Extinction Fleet tried to adapt. It sent thousands of smaller units to swarm the human ships. It deployed weapons that had not been used in millions of years. Nothing worked. When the command vessel finally fell, torn apart by coordinated strikes from every direction, the remaining enemy ships scattered into the void. Some would be hunted down over the following months. Others would drift forever in the darkness between stars. But the threat to the galaxy was broken. Christopher Lane walked through the wreckage of the Conclave station afterward. Human rescue teams worked alongside the survivors of a dozen different species, treating wounds and providing supplies. Among the rubble, he found Vreth Ka. The ancient speaker was trapped beneath a collapsed beam. His body was broken, his life fading. But his eyes were clear as he looked up at the human admiral. You came, Vreth Ka whispered. After everything we did, you came. Christopher knelt beside him. He could have reminded the speaker of the exile. He could have demanded an apology. Instead, he simply held the alien's hand. Of course we came, Christopher said. That is what you do when someone needs help. That is what humanity has always done. Vreth Ka made a sound that might have been a laugh. We were so afraid of you. We thought you would destroy us. We never imagined. That we would save you? Christopher finished. Neither did we, honestly. But here we are. The speaker's eyes began to close. Perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps you were always meant to be more than we feared. Christopher stayed with him until the end. When Vreth Ka finally died, Christopher closed the alien's eyes gently and stood. Around him, humans and aliens worked together to rebuild what had been destroyed. The war was won. The galaxy was saved. The decision to exile Earth passed. Then humanity made its rules clear. Part 5. The New Rules. 6 months after the war ended, the Galactic Conclave gathered once again in the Great Chamber on Valoris Prime. The building had been destroyed during the fighting, but human engineers had helped rebuild it. The new chamber was similar to the old one, with crystal seats and glowing ceilings, but there were differences. Human designs had been incorporated into the structure. Human lights cast a warmer glow. Human hands had helped shape something that would last for generations. Only 17 species remained. The Morathi were gone forever. The Seer Council had been reduced to a handful of survivors. Several smaller species had been wiped out completely, their cultures and histories erased from existence. The galaxy that had once seemed so vast and powerful now felt fragile and uncertain. Megan Brooks stood at the center of the chamber as the official representative of humanity. She wore a simple blue dress, nothing fancy, because she believed that what mattered was not how she looked, but what she said. Her hands did not shake. Her voice did not waver. She had been preparing for this moment her entire life. In the gallery above, Daniel Harper watched with pride. He was 93 years old now, thin and frail, but his mind was as sharp as ever. His grandson Kevin stood beside him in full military uniform, a captain now, decorated for bravery during the war. 30 years ago, Daniel said quietly, I stood where Megan stands now. I told them they would need us someday. I never imagined it would happen quite like this. He was watching Megan with intense focus. The new speaker of the conclave was a young Velith named Soreth Kai. He had been the captain of the refugee transport that Benjamin Cole had rescued years before. That act of mercy had changed his life and his understanding of humanity. Now he led what remained of galactic civilization. The conclave recognizes the representative of Earth, Soreth Kai announced. Ambassador Brooks, you may address the assembly. Megan stepped forward. She looked around at the delegates, at the empty seats where extinct species should have been sitting, at the survivors who watched her with a mixture of hope and fear. Thank you, Speaker Soreth Kai. I will be brief, because what I have to say is simple. She took a deep breath. 30 years ago, this body voted to exile humanity. You feared us. You believed we were dangerous, unstable, a threat to the peace you had maintained for thousands of years. You locked us away and expected us to die quietly. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. No one interrupted. We did not die. Instead, we grew stronger. We developed technology that you thought was impossible. We built ships that could cross the galaxy in seconds. And when the extinction fleet came to destroy everything you had built, we used that strength to save you. Megan's voice remained calm, almost gentle. We could have stayed behind our barrier. We could have watched you burn and told ourselves it was justice. Many of our people wanted exactly that. But we chose differently. We chose to help because that is who we are. She raised her hand before anyone could respond. Now I must make something clear. We are not here today to beg for acceptance. We are not here to negotiate our return to the conclave as junior members, grateful for any scraps you offer. We are here to establish new terms. Our terms. The chamber fell completely silent. First, there will be no more exile votes. Never again will this body condemn an entire species to isolation. If a member commits crimes, they will face justice through proper channels, with evidence and trials and the right to defend themselves. Collective punishment ends today. Megan looked at each section of the chamber in turn. Second, the wormhole network will be open to all spacefaring species. Knowledge and technology will be shared freely, not hoarded by those who happen to discover them first. The days of using information as power are over. More nods from the delegates. Some looked relieved. Others seemed uncertain. Third, humanity will take a permanent seat on the Security Council. Our fleet will remain active, and we will respond to threats against any member species, regardless of past conflicts. We will protect this galaxy because we choose to, not because anyone asked or ordered us to. Megan straightened her shoulders. These are not requests. These are conditions. You exiled us because you were afraid of what we might become. We spent 20 years in isolation, discovering exactly who we are. We are builders who create instead of destroy. We are protectors who defend instead of attack. We are stubborn beyond all reason, and we do not abandon people who need us. She paused to let her words settle. You can accept these terms and welcome humanity as equal partners in building a better galaxy. Or you can reject them and face whatever comes next alone. The choice belongs to you. Her voice softened slightly. But know this, whatever you decide today, we will continue doing what we believe is right. We do not need your approval. We never did. We saved you because it was the right thing to do, and we would do it again tomorrow regardless of how you vote. Soreth Kai called for the vote. One by one, the surviving species responded. The Veleth voted to accept. The remaining seers voted to accept. Every single species voted to accept without modification. When the final count was announced, Megan allowed herself a small smile. She caught Daniel's eye in the gallery above, and the old man nodded, with tears running down his face. That evening, Daniel stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt station, watching the stars that had once seemed so far away. Kevin had gone to celebrate with his crew. The delegates had departed to spread the news. Only Megan remained, standing quietly beside the man who had started everything 30 years before. You knew this would happen, she said. When you walked out of that chamber, you knew we would end up here eventually. Daniel shook his head, slowly. I hoped. Hope is different from knowing. What made you so certain we would survive? The old man thought about the question for a long time. He remembered the fear in his heart when the exile was announced. He remembered the anger and the grief and the terrible uncertainty of those first years. He remembered watching his species transform itself, becoming something stronger and wiser than it had ever been before. I knew what humanity was capable of, he said finally, even if they did not. We have never been defeated by hardship. We have only ever been made stronger by it. They thought they were punishing us. They were actually setting us free. Megan nodded. And now, what happens next? Daniel looked out at the galaxy that had once rejected his people, and now depended on them. He thought about all the work that remained to be done, alliances to build, wounds to heal, trust to earn, a civilization to rebuild from the ashes of war. Now comes the hard part, he said. Anyone can fight when they are angry. The real challenge is building something lasting when the anger fades. That is what separates conquerors from true leaders. He turned to face her. The galaxy is watching us. They want to know if we will use our power wisely or let it corrupt us. They want to know if our kindness was real or just a strategy. The answer to those questions will determine the future of everything. Megan looked at the stars for a long moment. Then I suppose we had better get started, she said. Daniel Harper smiled. It was the same smile he had worn 30 years ago when he walked out of the chamber that had condemned his people. Yes, he agreed. I suppose we had. The exile of humanity was over. The real story was just beginning. The decision to exile Earth passed. Then humanity made its rules clear. Part 1. The verdict. The Great Chamber on Valoris Prime was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known galaxy. It stretched for miles in every direction, with seats carved from crystal and metal rising up toward a ceiling that glowed with soft blue light. Today, for the first time in 300 cycles, every seat was filled. 27 species had sent their representatives to this place. Some were tall and thin, with bodies like glass. Others were covered in scales or fur or shells that clicked when they moved. A few floated in tanks of water, or breathed through masks that filtered the air. They had come from every corner of the galaxy, from worlds of ice and fire and endless ocean. They had come to decide the fate of humanity. Daniel Harper stood alone in the center of the chamber. He was 53 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many negotiations fail. He wore a simple black suit because Earth could not afford to show weakness through fancy clothes. His hands were steady at his sides, though his heart beat fast in his chest. The speaker of the conclave was a creature called Vreth Ka. He stood 12 feet tall, with a body like an insect, and eyes that reflected light in strange patterns. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. The matter before us today concerns the species known as humanity, Vreth Ka announced. They have been members of the galactic community for only 47 cycles. In that time, they have expanded beyond their original boundaries. They have developed weapons that concern us. Their population grows faster than any species in recorded history. Daniel listened without expression. He had heard these complaints before, in smaller meetings and private conversations. He knew what was coming. The Velith Dominion has accused humanity of crossing into their territory, Vreth Ka continued. The Marathi Collective has expressed concern about human weapons research. The Seer Council has warned that human expansion threatens the balance of power in this region of space. A Velith representative rose from his seat. He was covered in dark blue scales, and his voice hissed when he spoke. Humanity is a danger to us all. They breed like insects. They fight among themselves constantly. They have no respect for the old ways or the old powers. If we do not act now, they will consume everything. Another voice joined in, this one from a creature that looked like living stone. I have studied human history. They have fought 2 great wars among themselves in just 1 century. They have created weapons capable of destroying their own world. They are unstable and unpredictable. Daniel wanted to speak, but he had not been given permission. The rules of the conclave were clear. He could only respond when invited. More species rose to condemn humanity. They spoke of fear and suspicion. They spoke of resources and territory. They spoke of the old order that had kept peace for thousands of cycles, and how humanity threatened to destroy it. Only a few remained silent. The Seer Collective, as always, simply watched with their strange glowing eyes. A small species from the outer rim seemed uncomfortable with the proceedings, but said nothing. Finally, Vreth Ka called for the vote. The proposal before us is exile, he said. Humanity will be confined to their home system. No human vessel will be permitted beyond the boundaries of their sun. Any ship that attempts to cross the barrier will be destroyed. Trade and communication will end. They will be cut off from the galactic community until such time as we decide otherwise. Daniel felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. Imprisonment. Death by isolation. One by one the species voted. The Velith voted yes. The Marathi voted yes. The stone creatures and the water dwellers and the beings of pure energy all voted yes. When the final count came, 17 species had voted to banish Earth forever. 6 species voted no. 4 abstained. It did not matter. The majority had spoken. The vote has passed, Vreth Ka announced. Humanity is hereby exiled from the Galactic Conclave. The quarantine will begin in 30 standard days. The chamber buzzed with conversation. Some delegates looked satisfied. Others seemed relieved, as if a great threat had been removed. A few would not meet Daniel's eyes. Vreth Ka turned to the human ambassador. You have 1 minute to respond on behalf of your species. Daniel looked around the chamber. He saw the fear in some faces, the hatred in others. These beings had just condemned 8 billion people to isolation and slow decline. They had done it because they were afraid of what humanity might become. He could have argued. He could have begged. He could have threatened or pleaded or tried to negotiate. But Daniel Harper had been a diplomat for 30 years, and he knew when words would make no difference. Instead, he simply nodded. "I accept this verdict on behalf of Earth and all her colonies," he said. His voice was calm and clear. "We will honor the terms of our exile. We will not attempt to cross the barrier. We will not seek revenge or retaliation." Several delegates relaxed visibly. This was easier than they had expected. But Daniel was not finished. "However," he continued, "I want to make something very clear to everyone in this chamber. We did not come to the stars seeking war. We came seeking friendship. We came seeking knowledge. We came hoping to find our place among you." He paused and looked directly at Vrethka. "You have rejected us. That is your right. But remember this day. Remember the faces of those who voted against us. Remember those who said nothing in our defense." His voice grew harder, though it never rose above a conversational tone. "Because the day will come when you need us. Perhaps not tomorrow. Perhaps not in 100 cycles. But someday, something will threaten this galaxy that you cannot defeat alone. And on that day, you will call for help." Daniel turned slowly, looking at each section of the chamber in turn. "When that day comes, we will remember exactly who stood against us and who remained silent. We will remember this chamber, and this vote, and the fear in your eyes." He began walking toward the exit. "We accept your exile, but we do not accept your judgment of who we are. You think you are casting out a threat. In truth, you are setting us free to become something greater than you can imagine." He reached the door and paused one final time. "Humanity has never been defeated by hardship. We have only ever been made stronger by it. In your fear, you have given us the greatest gift possible. You have given us a reason to prove you wrong." Daniel Harper walked out of the chamber without looking back. Behind him, the delegates sat in uncomfortable silence. They had expected anger or tears or desperate bargaining. They had not expected this quiet acceptance that somehow felt more dangerous than any threat. The exile of Earth had passed. The galaxy believed the matter was settled.